Okay. So obviously, we all know how important it is to do research, right? So I also put together for you guys a workbook, so you can download it there, and I will definitely make sure I share it. I'll share it even later. And let me see if I can find a link. I copied it in the chat just to make it a little bit easier for you. So let me see, that should be this one, I think. Let me get the link. Copy. Here we go. So this is the link for the workbook, and for the Miro board, which I'll show you in a second. The link should be, I'll share. Let me grab all the link. And so this is the Miro board. Okay. So I will give it back again, but in case you want to get started. So what we're going to be talking about today is going to be, first of all, the main objections to why testing and why you should do testing. Hopefully an answer to that. And an answer to that. You guys can still see my screen, right? Yes. Yes, perfect. So the main objection, and then we're gonna learn how to kind of make a plan to for our testing so everything goes smoothly, as well as we'll talk about how to measure the results of the test in a quick and easy way. And then hopefully if you have time, we can have a really quick demo usability testing if any of you volunteers, if you have some time, but let's get started. So now we all know that usability testing is really important. We know that it saves time, we know it saves money, and we know it increases profit. So obviously, as an expert UX designer or as a new UX designer, you understand that if you fix usability UX problem before there are major issues, you're gonna save a lot of time. And I don't know if any of you have any experience with coding, but you know, if you have, that it takes a long time to code. Therefore, if you have to redesign something, not fun, and it will take a lot longer. You also save money because it's a lot cheaper to fix a Figma prototype than it is to fix code. And it will increase the profit because you know that if the experience is really poor or things don't work the way it's supposed to be, the user will go somewhere else. They will find something else, or find a different app, a different website. There are way too many options out there to kind of waste an opportunity. But unfortunately, there's a lot of objections. Now, before we talk about what I consider real objection, I need to kind of address the quote unquote elephant in the room, which is AI. So AI, I'm sure you heard about it in the past few months everywhere. But now what some companies are trying to do are trying to say that you don't really need to do user research or usability testing because you can use AI for to do that. I don't know if you guys ever heard that, but it is a real thing, which is kind of sad. So in my opinion, and I think in opinion of most UI person, user research without user is not real research. So a company like, for example, Synthetic Users, I don't know if any of you heard of them before. Yeah. So, and which is really ironic, if you go to their website, which is Synthetic User, they literally say user research without the user. It just, I mean, people thought it was a joke, but I think, I mean, it's a real company. It's just insane. So what they're saying is that, well, as long as you understand some character, a lot of data about people, then you can come up with your own, user, even if they're not real people. Now, another thing that's probably pretty common, you may have seen it lately, is one of the reasons why probably that's not a good idea is because no matter how much data you have, people are very different. So any of you saw this going around the internet about Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne? how they, if you look at just at their demographic and a little bit of the psychographic, are exactly the same. They're both male, born in 1948, raised in the UK, married twice, they live in a castle, and they're wealthy and famous. They're both doing exactly the same thing, but obviously they're definitely not the same thing, right? So, and this is kind of what the problem with a place like, with a site like that, because this is one of the examples they have on their website. And I don't know how well you can see it from the screen, but you could see how superficial this is. And sure, you maybe can come up with some really basic testing at the beginning of the process, but there's no way that AI could take the place of people. And this is the whole point of doing user research. You create a relationship with your user, which are human. Now, one other tool that people are start using it a lot is ChatGPT. And Adam Fard, which is a great UX designer, I strongly recommend following, did actually a test to see if ChatGPT could create a better persona than a regular person, like an actual researcher. And what they found out is that, you know, maybe for a very superficial week 1 or week 2 persona iteration, it will be okay. But, you know, starting from the second week in the project on, obviously the insight that UX researcher generated were way better than the generic information AI uncovers. I honestly not surprised, but obviously people need to do those tests because there is definitely a push to say like, well, it's so much cheaper. Why would we have to bother with people when we can actually do it via AI? So I don't know what the future will hold, but I really, really hope that this is just like a novelty things and not gonna stay forever. Okay. All right. So what are the main objection to this? So the main objection to no, actually, sorry. Let me make sure I shared the right screen because I'm not. Yeah, sorry. I was sharing the wrong file. Hey, now I should see better. So the main objection, they're real, are not enough time, not enough budget, not enough ability to find people, and not enough tools. Any of you ever heard those kind of reasoning from your boss or whoever, you know, saying like, oh, it costs too much money, there's not enough time?
Budget and time for sure.
Budget and time, which sure enough are the first two, right?
Hmm.
So how can we respond to that? Now, there, you know, I'm not saying they're completely wrong, and that's, you know, you don't need any time or any money to do that, of course. But what I am saying is that skipping research, especially usability testing, means that you're going to have poor user experience. And many researchers, and this is one of the most recent one, found that 88% of customers did not return to a site or an app, and actually for apps is even higher, if they had a bad experience. Think about how many options there are in the App Store or in, you know, Google Play, right? I don't know, maybe you have the same experience, you download it, you want a particular app and you download 3 or 4 to see which one you like, you try them for 2 minutes and you immediately can tell, oh, this sucks, I'm not gonna go, right? Also, like I said at the beginning, some research is better than no research. And in fact, the NN group, the Nielsen-Norman group, found that 85% of the worst usability problem can be discovered with as little as 5 users. 5. And I mean, 5 users is not a lot, right? Obviously, the more, you know, the highest number the user, the better. But even then, Nielsen was recommending that over 15 users is really not making any difference. So, but again, 85% of the error with 5 people, that seems pretty worthwhile to me. So, and it's not gonna take that much time. 5 users can be tested in one morning. Maybe one day if you're really pushing it, right? And I'm pretty sure that every company, no matter how rushed they are, have one day they can dedicate to usability testing. The other big thing is, of course, we have no money, right? Everybody hears that all the time. And I'm not gonna lie to you, you have to spend some money to do some research for sure, right? But again, it's so much cheaper to get it right and they're doing it wrong, and then you have to do it again. And this is one of the problems I see a lot of company dealing with, is that they think about how much it will cost to do research, but they don't think how much it will cost not to do research, because it's harder to see, right? But 90% of internet users are really less likely to return to an app. 90% if the experience is bad. Also, I want to point out that, let's say this was actually from synthetic user that want to show you how much cheaper it is to use their product. So this will be with 100 participants in a year, which you most likely don't need 100 participants. But let's say that you want to test 10 participants, and that include about $50 reward for each of them, right? Plus about 30 hours of a researcher time. And this is for 10 participants, but remember, you need half of them if you really want to do at least something. If you do it yourself, it's probably going to be surely a little bit more than $1,000, right? 1,500 maybe if you count all the hours. But what you're not going to pay in UX research now, those $1,500 that you will save, you will pay down the line, and you will pay so much more. Do you know how much developers get paid in San Diego, at least? Any guesses how much they get paid an hour?
Well, I think per year is about maybe 130.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Per year, it can be anything between 110 and up. So if you look at this was actually taken yesterday. So that's based on April 2023. In average, nationwide is about $45 an hour. But if you look at the right, there's all the salary that were posted yesterday for senior software developer, software engineer in San Diego, with the pay was 114 to 154, 128 to 176,000, 115 to 140,000. This is really expensive. And you know, $1,500 that you can spend in usability testing is really not going to go very far in development. It really won't. There's no way that you're going to be able to fix and recode a whole app for $1,500. It's not going to happen. So, and I've been working with this for this project for about a year, and we are still waiting for the developer to finish creating the prototype, and it get constantly pushed forward and forward and forward and forward. And we haven't even done usability testing yet. Imagine if we just publish it and then we do usability testing. So that would be crazy. So yes, it's not free, but it's really not that expensive. And like I said before, 2 is better than 0. You can even use what is called proxy users, because that's another problem. It's like, oh, I don't know how to find users. Well, there's a lot of different ways you can find users. There are companies specifically doing that will recruit people for you. You could even have unmoderated testing through a company like UserZoom or things like that. But you can also use worst case scenario proxy users. So anybody know what a proxy user is? Have I ever heard of it? No. So the idea of a proxy user is not the real user, but somebody that's close enough that can pretty much simulate most of the difficulties the user would actually have. So it's not your actual client, but somebody really close to it, right? So again, it's always better to find the real users, but of course, you can have proxy user at the very least. And even internal testing, meaning having a couple of employee testing, is better than no testing. Because if you're having a program and you're developing an app and you're asking, I don't know, the marketing director, sure, will be much more knowledgeable than a regular person, but probably less knowledgeable than you. So even that will be better. And that will be basically free. And like I said, you can also do guerrilla recruiting. Just walk down somewhere and say, hey, do you mind checking this out for me? Assuming that those are somewhat within your target audience. And remember, nothing take the place of a real usability testing, but this is helpful especially if you need to convince your boss or whoever of how important usability testing is. Take them along and have them watch somebody using the app. I will almost guarantee they will realize how important that is. I mean, can't promise, but that looks pretty much like that, right? And the last one, which is, I feel the most ridiculous of all, is like, oh, we don't have any tools. Well, you don't need any tools. So you don't need a testing lab. Yes, it's great to have a huge facility and a two-way mirror, one-way mirror, and eye tracking and all kind of stuff, but you really do not need it to get some usability testing done. You can do it in any room as long as you have a prototype and a person to test it. That's really all you need. Maybe a chair, but other than that, you really don't need nothing else, right? You only need a facilitator to do the test, a prototype, and participant. That's it. Now, you definitely wanted to, give them a reward, but reward doesn't have to be money. A reward could be a discount on your product, for example. A reward could be anything else, depending how deep, big the testing is. It could even have a free lunch, right? As long as it's not like a free lunch for like 3 hours of testing. But, for something quick, it doesn't have to be money. There are different ways to reward people. And most people want to help. So you will be surprised by how many people will be agreeing to do it, even if you don't have a lot of cash to give them. As long as you show that you really recognize how important it is what they're doing for you. Okay, so gratitude goes a long way. Now, this book, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's really a small book, but it's awesome because it really bringing home the idea that I wouldn't say everybody can do usability testing, because I still think you need to have the expertise and the ability to listen and to talk to people. So I don't think you can just like pick the first person down the street and say, okay, you go do usability testing. But it really doesn't require anything more than good researcher skills and listening skills. You only need about 5 participants. You don't need expensive tools. It can be done, and it should be done. In fact, Steve Krug, he actually recommend to do about every month for like a few hours every month, like one morning a month. I think that's what he recommend, to have even like 1 or 2 people testing. Better than having no testing. So I think it's doable. So, and I honestly saw the result myself doing very informal usability testing. I was still able to find a huge amount of usability problem. So you definitely can do that. Any questions so far before we get more on the nitty-gritty on how to do it? Do you think that will help convince your boss a little bit, or to give you something to try to convince them? Yeah. Maybe. Hopefully. I hope for you. So, all right. So let's go on and see, okay, so how do we do it? So now hopefully I convince you that you can do it. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need tons of tools. So how can we do it? Well, I broke it down kind of in 2 pieces. So the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure that you have the right people. You want to plan for the test. You want to choose some metrics so you can physically measure, because guess what? When you start talking about numbers, you can, oh, thank you, Ipsida. That's awesome. Once you have metrics, an actual number is a lot easier to convince people. It's like, hey, look what we found. We found all this error. You know how much money it will cost to fix it. So that's great. And then of course, do the test itself. So let's start out with the first thing. Who do you actually need to do a test? Like I said, technically only 2 people, the facilitator and the participant, right? So, but obviously if you have observer, other people, that's great, but you only have about 2 people you really need. So what does a facilitator do? Well, the facilitator, just like Steve Krug mentioned, is a tour guide and a therapist all in once. So what do I mean by that? Well, as a tour guide, it will explain what the test is about. It will present the different scenarios. He will ask question, and importantly, will not suggest the right answer, which is very difficult to do. He will try to make the participant feel at ease. He also will continue to emphasize that there are no wrong answers. He will reassure the participant that any feedback is great feedback, because a lot of time the participant feels like they don't giving you the right feedback, whatever that may be. And they always worry like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not really, excuse me, I'm not really helping you. You also encourage them to think out loud. You observe the reaction and behaviors, and then collects and group as outcomes. So why do I say a therapist? Well, because the goal of a facilitator is trying to get as much as possible about what their user mental models, what they're thinking, and why they're doing what they're doing. So for example, if somebody will ask you, oh, is that the right thing I need to do? Is that the right button I need to click? So your answer, instead of to answer yes or no, it will be something like, well, what do you think? What do you think will happen if you do click that button? Or, if they make a kind of a strange face, it's like, oh, you did not expect it to happen? Why not? Or if they're very quiet, it's like, well, can you tell me what you're thinking or how you feel about whatever? So that's why I like how you mentioned the therapist, because there is definitely some overlap between the two. So now there is one other thing that I want to mention about the facilitator. One of the hardest thing to do, and I mentioned a little bit later as well, is that you want to make sure that your participant, wonderful, yes, always ask open-ended question, never yes or no. Very, very good, thank you. You also want to make sure that they don't think they're hurting your feelings, because most people don't want to hurt your feelings. I know it's hard to believe, but most people want to be nice. And so it's really interesting when you're trying to make them feel that like, you're not hurting my feelings. And we'll talk about scripts in a second, but like, it's very, very important. You will be surprised by how worried people are to hurt your feelings. Now, if you have more people doing the test, even better. You could add in one or more observers, which will help you take notes. That would be great, because then the facilitator can actually focus on the participant and look at their body language, and not just what they do, but also what they look at and those kind of things. If you do have an observer, they should obviously introduce themselves, so the person doesn't feel like there are 15 people looking. Obviously, it does not help the participant, but it takes good notes and ensure that the test is not too stressful in case the facilitator doesn't notice. So you want to work as the advocate for the participant, and then you will observe any reaction behavior. It may even suggest question to the facilitator. It's usually easier to have one main person to ask question and to present scenarios, so that the participant is not confused about, okay, who should I answer to? So if you have observer, by all means, have them participate, as in asking, suggesting your question, but I always feel that is usually more comfortable for the participant if it's one single person asking the question and, trying to observe the scenarios. And then, of course, the participants are chosen with the screening questionnaire. We'll talk in a second. Usually they need to sign a consent form. Doesn't have to be an NDA if it's not something super secret, but usually you want to make sure they're very aware about what's going on, especially if you feel like you're gonna be recording them with either a audio recorder or video recorder. They definitely need to give you consent. 100% in California. I don't know how it is in other states, but in California, you must let people know if you're recording them. And then, of course, they're going to perform the scenario, answer question. They may fill out some questionnaire. They should be encouraged to think out loud. And also, one thing I find that usually really helps is to remind them that you can stop at any time for any reason. You're not like stuck here. If for whatever reason you want to interrupt, that's totally fine. You're still going to get your reward. Just feel free to leave whenever you feel like it, if you feel uncomfortable. And of course, receive some kind of reward, but again, doesn't have to be money. Okay. All right. Does it make sense so far? Yeah, awesome. So what is the plan? Well, any usability testing will be successful if you plan it correctly. You don't want to improvise. It's something that, again, you want to make sure it gets as valuable as possible, especially if you think that your boss is not 100% convinced. So the more you plan it in advance and you show your boss or your client the plan, the better it's going to be. They're going to be a lot more confident that you're going to do the right things. So those are kind of the steps, kind of a checklist, if you will, that I recommend before you start in a test. So obviously you want to find the right participant with the screening survey, and we'll spend a little bit more time with all of those items. Very important, you want to choose what you're testing. You need to have very clear goals. One thing is like, oh, I want to see how the app is working. Well, that's not clear enough. That's not specific enough. What exactly are you trying to find out? Is the navigation problematic, or the icon don't make any sense, or whatever that is, but be very specific. Then you're going to choose the scenarios for all your tests. You obviously need to have some kind of prototype ready. I also recommend you to prepare and rehearse your scripts, especially if you haven't done it. Just write down exactly what you want to say, especially at the beginning, as a welcome, and trying to make it sound natural so that you're not like, okay, let me read this to you. Then I also recommend create a note-taking template. In the little workbook I gave you, there is a link to an Excel spreadsheet. Actually, it's a Google Sheets. Ooh, somebody has some issue with the microphone? I don't know. Okay. And then, of course, have a reward, have some consent form ready, and then schedule breaks between sessions. This is for you. Don't forget, it is tiring to listen and pay attention to people. So make sure you have a little bit of time to debrief, and also to make sure that everybody can understand what's going on between you and the other people, that are doing the test. So what am I talking about as far as screening questionnaire? Well, I mentioned before, you can use external company to find your participant, or, there are a lot of different ways to do that. But if you want to find your participant yourself, either among your, I don't think it's my microphone that makes all this noise, right?
It looks like is a Clint.
Oh, maybe Clint. Okay,
Clint.
so let me mute.
There we go.
There we go. So you can do your own questionnaire and send it to either existing customer, which would be ideal, or even people that are within your target audience. But how do you know if they are within your target audience? Well, that's why you do your questionnaire. So you want to ask questions that would allow you to screen people, so that those people are people that would possibly use my product, those people are not. Now, that doesn't mean you only have to test people that are within your target audience. Obviously, that's ideal. But like I said before, some testing is better than no testing. So when I send out a screening questionnaires, I usually have a couple of different groups of questions. You don't want to go too far. I usually do probably no more than 10 questions, 11 if really pushing it, just because people don't like to answer questions. So, but you want to have both some general question, but also very specific to your product. So for example, let's say that this is a screening test questionnaire for people that wanted to use some kind of news app, like a new app that show you the news. So specific to your product will be things like, do you follow the news? How often do you share pages? Where are you getting your news? Do you trust the news apps, or do you ever doom scroll, or things like that that are related to what your app is? But you also want to ask some general question, like, for example, do you use any apps? Because if they don't use any app, there's really no point of having them test yours, right? Or do you use social media? Or are you worried about online privacy? Or what smartphone do you use? What do you feel? How do you feel about AI? Do you think it's great or evil, or things like that? It's very, very straightforward, right? So what I was thinking we could do, so that you can practice a little bit, I want to give you a few minutes, maybe like about 5 to 10 minutes, to come up with some screening questions for an app that hopefully you're all familiar with, which is Spotify. Anybody's not familiar with Spotify by any chance? Okay, if you're not, consider any other music playing app. So if you connect to the mural board, and again, I can post the link again in case you haven't got it. Where is it? Oh, here we go. So if you go to the mirror board, and I'll show you. Oops. I'm gonna copy this. Copy. Let me repaste it here. So if you go to the mirror board, so let me share it with you. Where's my phone? Is this one, right? Yes. Okay. There. So if you go there, you should see that there is a few boards. So, oh, here you are. You guys are already here. So I don't have to explain anything. So yeah, on the second board, sorry, they're a little out of order. On the second board, if you want to write some of what survey question do you think would be important to find somebody for testing Spotify? And again, you can do both both general questions as well as like more specific question. So if you never use Miro before, it's pretty simple. You can pick either a text and just start typing, or you can use like a little sticky notes and then just type it. You can zoom in. Obviously, it's really kind of small like that, but you can zoom in and start typing and then just kind of move your sticky notes out, or you can just write and use text and just type, this is my question. And you can just increase the size. Obviously, it's really tiny right now, but this is my question, and write down your question. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes and come up with some question, and then we'll come back and see all those questions and kind of talk about it. So let's see if I can try to play some music. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I'll try. So. a couple more minutes, and then we can look at your questions. All right. Wow, looks like we got in a lot of questions. Very nice, very nice. Were you guys able to hear the music? By any chance? I'm not sure. Yes,
Well, for a little bit.
for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know
Well,
if that was that Hotel California. I couldn't
yes,
tell.
it was very
All right.
All right. So by the way, that was a Spotify playlist. So here it is. So in case you actually want to hear it, I know it's always a trial and error here if it goes through or not. So, all right. So let's see some of those cool questions. So you guys are awesome. Look how nicely you divided all the different colors. It's pretty. So, okay, I'm gonna start from what is on my left on my screen. So we have what type of music you listen to. Other than music, what else do you listen? Who do you listen with? Oh, that's a good one. When you find a banging song, how do you share it with other? How often do you listen to music? Did you ever own an MP3 player or iPod? Oh, now I feel really at home. I was actually just looking at MP3 player the other day, and he's on Wired. The last issue of Wired actually advertising MP3 players. So do you stream music? Let's see. Ask about device and the radio. Offer choices. How frequently do you listen to music? Do you listen while commuting? That's great. How often do you search for new artists? Wonderful. All right, do you listen? How do you find new music? The type of places you would like to listen to music? How does it make you feel? Very nice. Very good questions. So I really like that. Very cool, very cool. So let's go back to our presentation. Let's move on. That's great. So this is exactly what kind of question you want to ask. You want to ask your possible customer, ideally. Let me go back. Let me find my screen. Too many windows. Okay. So that would be a great way to do that and to find that. Now, there are a lot of different ways to create surveys. So one way, for example, is Typeform. So this is an example of an old form I did. I gave you the link in case you want to kind of curious to see. I really like Typeform. The only problem with Typeform is that the free account is very limited. So, but it's great to test it out. Their forms are really pretty, contrary to like Google Form, which are the one I've been sending you guys. But like I said, the free account is very limited. So, but if you want to check it out, because again, forms don't need to be boring. And the more fun the form is, the more easy it will be for other people to actually do it, right? So this is what I came up with, and seems like you guys got everything. And in fact, I really like the MP3 one that I don't think I added on mine. But I had how much time do you spend online a week? How often do you stream music? Do you like to discover new music? Do you follow any artists? When do you listen? Do you download songs? What smartphone do you use? Do you use social media? Do you listen to podcasts? How much, is probably important. I did it twice. How much time you spend online? Do you enjoy audiobooks? Do you use paid apps? The reason I asked for this is because, again, it's not necessary for testing the app, but it's good to gauge how likely a person will be to actually buy the paid account on Spotify. If you have a Spotify account, how many of you are using the paid one versus the free one? I know I had to upgrade this Christmas, but I'm kind of curious. You want to, if you're like have the paid one, you can just put in the chat and say paid.
Paid. Yes, paid.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Paid.
Okay. 4, 5. Oh, most of you, a lot of you guys have a paid version. Okay, that's great. Awesome. So so that's why it could be interesting to know if it's like, oh, how many people really will pay for it. And then of course, don't forget the most important thing. What's your name? Because otherwise you send out an anonymous survey, you have no idea how to get back to them. Now, as far as the age range, be careful and only ask if it's really important. So, and also always ask in ranges that they make sense. Don't say 40 plus. Because 40 plus, as somebody who is 40 plus, is really kind of almost insulting, as in like, okay, 40, 70 is the same thing. So if you do have to have age ranges, I recommend to keep it somewhat the same length. So if you're like every age range is 15 years, keep on going, even though you're probably thinking most people will not, in the 80s will not use Spotify, but don't just say 40 plus, which I saw way too many times. All right, awesome. Now, once you have the people, that you're gonna need to choose your task. Now, this is my favorite way to find the right task. And I don't know if you guys ever use a similar matrix, but I really, really love it because especially when you have a boss like breathing on your neck, they all feel like all features are important. Everything is crucial. We have to have every single thing. But as you know, you don't. And so I really like this matrix because it helped me figure it out what's really, really crucial. Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot my video. So obviously the darker color means really, really important. And I don't know if you can read it, but at the bottom there is few people, some people, most people, everyone. And on the vertical is rarely, sometimes, most time, always. And this is definitely helpful because it allows you to prioritize features. So I'll let you guys go back into Miro and do something for Spotify. But of course, what would be, do you think, the do or die feature for Spotify? Meaning there is no feature, there is no Spotify. The most obvious that everybody said.
Right. Streaming music, right?
Streaming music, right? If you don't stream music, there is no Spotify. Okay. So I'm gonna give you another few minutes, like 5 minutes, to write some of the stuff you can do on Spotify and position it in the square. Now you can have more than one thing, of course, on each square, but that would give you a chance to kind of start thinking about what is really, really important. And remember, there is no wrong answers, right? It's kind of a judgment call. And also it's probably going to be based on what you think is important based on how you use Spotify. So, which is why we're going to still need to do usability testing to see if what you think is crucial will match with what other people are crucial. So how about another 5 minutes or so? I'll try to play again. Let's see if it works this time. All right. Well, let's see what we got here. I love that somebody say listen to full albums. I feel at home now because I still like to do that. So that's really cool. Nice. So I really love to see how different of you did different priorities, like how creative playlists appear in different squares. I love that. Because again, this is all based on what you think and what you do. And this is exactly why you need to do usability testing to see what are the majority of customer think. So, but I love it. So listen to song, listen to music, see song titles and artists, name of songs, artist names. It's great. That's great. Love it. I don't know. I'm trying to look if there is anybody that said actually watch the lyrics. Did anybody said that? I'm trying to kind of read there.
That's a good one. That's a really good one, by the way.
I mean, seriously, to me, is one of the most important thing. I know I'm just kind of nerdy that way, but I have to know the lyrics. Maybe because my English is my second language. And so if I really like a song, sometimes it's hard for me to hear what they're saying. Plus, I know it's hard for everybody. It's just easier maybe for me to admit, because I don't know if you ever seen those collection of like wrong lyrics that people were convinced they were saying. So, but yeah, so to me, it would be totally like, absolutely, I have to have that feature. So, but that's kind of cool. Awesome. That's great. That's great. And there was another one I noticed that it was like that I do a lot, but it was considered not as important. Let me see. Like playlist for me is really important. So it's kind of interesting that for some of you it's not as crucial, but it's really nice. Awesome. Cool. Now, this is a very important steps in the process, because once you have the task, then what you can do, you can start creating your scenarios. So scenarios are basically little stories. Oops, why did it go so far? Sorry, went a little too far. Okay, so what scenarios are, so once you have your task, then it's time to do your scenario. So scenarios basically are little stories built around a task. So because to have really good, honest response, you don't want it to just tell people, do this, do that, right? So you want to try to have people pretend they're in that situation. And this is what you do with the scenario. You basically take the task and create a little mini story around it. Remember, as human, we're wired to understand and like stories. So by creating a little story, it's easier for someone to kind of lose the idea that they're doing something fake, like a test, and really think is real. So this is just a basic example, but let's say that the task you want the participant to do is to upload a photo to a photo sharing app like Instagram, right? But instead of say upload a photo, you want to be more specific. You want to say something like, you took a great photo of your favorite celebrity and you wanted all your friends to see it quickly. So you don't really tell them upload your photo, but you kind of just suggest it, right? How do you share your photo? And the reason why you want to be not as specific is that maybe you think about there's only one way to do it, like upload the picture, but maybe your customer think about a different way. Then like, oh, okay, maybe I can just send a notification to all my friends and say, hey, I just got this really beautiful picture, come over to my Instagram and look at that. So that really give the freedom to your participant to come up with something different that you may not expect it. So how do you write a good scenario? Well, number one, you have to give me a realistic context, right? You don't just want to say, oh, you just passed your bar exam. Unless you're dealing with lawyers, probably that's not a very realistic thing that's going to happen in my life. So you probably don't want to do that. Also, you want to, as much as possible, to use your participant language. So what does that mean? Don't use jargons. Don't use things that maybe you as a designer are familiar with, but other people are not. The other thing, and this is very difficult, to trying to avoid product specific terms. So what do I mean? Well, when I was saying like upload, an image, instead of saying upload a photo, which is probably the same word you're using in the actual test, you want to just use kind of, no metaphor, but just go around it. Don't use the exact word. Avoid direct instruction, make sure it's detailed enough, but not too much. Also make sure there is a solution. Don't ask me to do something that's impossible to do. And shouldn't be too hard or too difficult, and you should use real content. And the other thing that you want to be really cautious is trying to avoid very powerful emotional reaction. For example, you may ask somebody like, you're going to call your mom and ask for whatever. What if they just lost their mom, right? That would be really painful. So trying to be as neutral in your question as possible. Like, for example, the scenario I just showed you before about uploading the photo is that I could have just said, oh, you took a picture of your child, but what if you just had a miscarriage, or you've been trying to have a child and you can't? A celebrity is something that's concrete, but is really not emotionally charged. So hopefully that makes sense. So just to give an example, let's say that this is the app. That's the app I'm gonna test, and it's some kind of news app, right? So maybe those are the 4 tasks I want to try. So check out the app and create an account, and then read the article, check the article sources, and find out how the articles are selected. So a very clear task, but you don't want to just give it to me that simply. So for example, you could expand it and say, hey, your friend sent you an invite for this news app, and they are raving about it. You are curious and want to know what it's all about. And that would increase, it would help them download the app and maybe log in. Or the second task, read the article beyond the headline. Is you're reading this headline, AI pioneer Geoffrey Hinton leaves Google to warn about AI risk, and it piques your interest. You want to know what it's all about. Once again, you don't tell me go read the article, but you kind of suggest it, right? So maybe the last one, find out how the article are selected. So you could say you're intrigued and very impressed by the article selection. You wonder how the app chose them. And by the way, this is a real app, which I strongly recommend. I really love it. It's called the Newsroom. So if you want to check it out, it's definitely a really good one. You only show you 5 pieces of news every day, and they're selected from a variety of sources and show you both sides. So I really, really like it. So when you get ready with your task, you have all your scenarios, you have your participant. Now you want to get ready on preparing the physical test. So lucky for you, there are tons of scripts that you can download, and I'll give you some links in the workbook. Obviously, you want to customize it so it matches. And then you want to make sure you include, a welcome, what you're doing, why you're there, but also don't forget to emphasize that there are no wrong answers, and make sure you introduce if there is any member of the team, make the participant feel at ease, and also provide details about the length of the test so they don't think that, oh my gosh, when is ever going to finish, right? So again, those are 2 simple examples. I give you the link in the workbook. One is from usability.gov, which is a government website. The other one from Steve Krug's, but they're pretty much all the same, right? Thank you for participating, blah, blah, blah. Today, we're asking you to do this and that. So they're very straightforward, but it's important you prepare it so it sounds like it's natural and it's coming out just from you. I also recommend to have a good note-taking file. This is kind of what I like to use, and that's the link that, again, is in the workbook, but you can get it from here as well. It's just a spreadsheet, but I like to have it set up before we start the test. And I included information about what project it is, the stage, and the stage in which the project is. And of course, the not one space for each scenarios, that may be notes, some metrics, everything you think is important. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, anything that makes it easy for you to take notes. So if you rather have a pen and paper, that's fine as well, as long as you get it prepared so it will save you time and you don't have to get distracted trying to write notes in kind of a rough format. So I really, really like to have it ready in advance. And then the last thing you want to prepare before the test is metrics. So what are you going to measure? Now, of course, you're going to measure, the impression of the user, if they're going to be able to complete the task, all those kind of things. But I also like to add some kind of measurable metrics, even though they may not be statistically significant because you only have a few participants, they're still going to be really, really important. So those are my 2 favorite ones. There are tons of other metrics, but those are the one I really like. The first one is UX Lite. I think it stands for, I don't remember, usability metrics or something like that. But the reason I like it is because there's 2 questions. That's it, nothing more. One is, this product is easy to use, and this product features meet my requirements. And they're both on a scale from 1 to 5, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So it takes very little time for the customer, for the user to do it, but it still can give you really good results. And the numbers, 1 and 5 is short enough that you can pick the right number. The CSAT, which is a customer satisfaction score, is very similar. It simply say how satisfied with the experience. and could be goods, services. I'm sure you saw it before. This is what from a bathroom of all places at the airport, asking me how was my experience with the bathroom, which I thought was weird, but but I really like the little faces. So that's why I kind of copied it around. So again, those are things you probably want to do after your test. And then some other metrics, for example, the customer effort score, the company made it easy for me to handle my issue. Once again, this is on 7 points from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And finally, the single ease question that get asked, I wouldn't say after every task, but after some scenario, especially complex one, you can say, how easy was it to complete the task? And again, a scale of 1 to 7 from very hard to very easy. Very simple, but it could give you a metric. And again, a lot of time your boss, your superior really likes numbers. So that's a way to also get in a little more quote unquote scientific way to there. Now, I want to mention this just because I love the fact that we can use a scale that was developed by NASA. It's called the task load index. So of course, this is not always, good for the project you're doing. And there are 6 questions, but how cool is that to say you're using a scale that was developed by NASA, right? So, but this is mainly for a task load, how mentally demanding, how physically demanding. And now it comes as an app. So if you want to download it from NASA, you can actually have an app and measure the response through your app. How cool is that? So, all right, finally is the time of the test. So what can you test? Well, you should test as early as you can, meaning you could have paper prototype and have usability testing. In fact, that's amazing because it's really fast, it's really cheap, and you can still get a lot of usability insights. You can also have high resolution paper prototypes, basically screenshot that you can print out. You could have wireframe, click-through prototype, finished products. So really, you should test at any single one on the stage if you can. The more results, the better it is. And how are you sure that you can get honest feedback? Well, there is no guarantee, of course, but based on a wonderful article from the Interaction Design Foundation, those are 4 things you can try to avoid. So remember that most participants do not want to hurt your feelings. So trying to deflect any perception. In fact, one time I went to do a usability testing as a participant, and the facilitator specifically told me, oh, don't worry about hurting my feeling. I didn't work on this project. So now I don't know if it's true or not, and I don't think you have to push it that far, but definitely emphasize you're not hurting my feelings. We're here to learn, and we need to make sure we do it right. Also, make sure they feel like you're not testing them. No matter how long has it been since I've been doing this job, and I know that they are not testing me, every single time I have to do a task, and doesn't have to be a usability test, but anything else in front of somebody else, I always feel like I'm being judged. So it's very important you remind them, we're not testing you, we're testing the app. Any feedback is welcome. Everything you say is going to be really important. The other thing you want to make sure they understand is like, is not, again, that you're not testing, therefore it's not a race to completion. Let's see if I can figure it out. This is not what's about. It's about what is the process that you do to do the test. And finally, let them tell you what they think. So don't just give them tasks. Ask nice, open-ended question at the beginning and the end. What do you think about it? Do you have any recommendation? Is there anything, if you were a designer, that you would like to change? Because most participants are happy to give you their, feedback, even if it's outside the task that they were doing. So how can you put all this together? I recommend creating a usability testing plan. Once again, one other thing I put in the workbook is a PDF of an example, but there are a million templates as well. But the idea is to create a professionally looking document that, once again, you can give to your client or to your boss to make it look like, hey, this is not just, touchy-feely thing. This is a scientific study that we actually do. He's going to bring you a lot of return on investment. And this is a serious thing that we should undertake. So it's simply a document that defines everything about the task. And it's also helpful in case you want to share it with your other teammate, because it will share not only the scope of the task where you're trying to figure it out, the purpose, the schedule, but also it will include all the scenarios, all the questions, all the data you're going to be collecting. So everything in one single place, and it will make sure that the rest of the team is on the same page. So with that, you should be really ready for creating your own usability testing. And I just want to know if there is any other question. We have a few minutes for question. Also, you notice that in the mirror board, there was the other section about creating scenarios for some of the tasks you identified for Spotify. I didn't want it to go too past our time, so I let you do it in your own time. The mirror document will be there. But I want to make sure there was any question, I can answer it. And once again, this is the link for the workbook. And if you don't mind at the end, if you can answer a survey for me. Hopefully I convince you that feedbacks is really important. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll take the 2 seconds it takes to answer the survey. So
I'm happy to learn that, 5 to 15 tests are enough, because
yes.
so I'm really
Yes.
bad at writing, take notes.
Uh-huh.
Because I write and then I don't understand what it says, and then I'm also really slow at typing. And then, so if
Right.
I'm typing, I'm not paying attention to what they're saying.
Right.
So,
Right.
so do you always have another person just
Mhm.
take notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, that totally helps. And it makes you feel so much less pressure because you've only focused on one thing and somebody else will take time. Now, if you
Okay.
don't find anybody else, you can always ask the person you're testing if you can videotape them. You don't have to videotape their face if they don't want to, but at least you can go behind them and see what they're doing. That's
Okay.
another thing that I noticed, that if I'm by myself and I'm worried that I'm going to miss something, that can be done. It's very helpful very easy to do if you do a remote moderated testing, so that you're not in the same room anyway. So it takes 2 seconds to click record, and then you can really focus on the person and the screen, but you have a record of it.
Okay. And so if assume you have somebody taking notes, do you still go back and watch the recording and try to take more notes and find something
Yes,
that's missing? Okay.
I do personally, but I'm very I'm a perfectionist. So, but it really helpful. Like I recently had a walkthrough on a software application. I was there and I took notes, but we also recorded. And when I went back, I noticed how many things I missed.
Okay.
And I mean, in that case, I had to really be specific because I had to create a journey map. So I have to be really, really, really detailed. I'm not saying every test is like that. But having that video was really, really important. Plus, you can share it to your boss that think it's not worth it doing usability testing, and it's like, hey, look at this customer, how much is struggling. So
yeah,
hopefully not, but yeah.
and that was a good comparison too of how much developers get paid and how much, because
Right.
I don't know.
No. Trust me, it
I'm
takes
not
a long time to code. I mean, I do some front end, and oh man, it takes a very long time to code. So
and sometimes we might have even a team of 3 or 4 developers, right? So they're all getting paid to develop the same thing, and then it doesn't work.
Of course, yeah, no, and I mean, and that's what most people don't understand. That they thinking only about, oh, it's gonna cost money, but like I said, think about how much it's gonna cost you not to do usability testing.
Yeah.
That's usually much more. So
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, lastly, you're asking, what if your product is niche and you have trouble finding user to test? In a case like this, is that a new product or something that exists already? Something that exists. Okay, so one way is to ask Cloud Management app. Okay, so one way you can go about it is to see if you can send out a survey to your existing customer and ask if anybody would be willing to help you out. I've done that before. You may not find tons of people answering, but sending a survey, say, hey, we are you know, redesigning, we're making the changes, we really need help. It would be wonderful to get your feedback. If you're willing, you know, contact me. And that's one way. So you will get your real customers. If you can't, you can try to go to one of those places. I will tell you, one of those company, either UserZoom, or there's so many other that can try to find people for you. Yes, great advice. Yes, it's very, very good advice. Yeah. So, and remember, your customer most of the time wanted to help you. They really do, because nobody likes an application that doesn't work well. So as long as you don't make it as like you have to do it, you will notice that a lot of people are willing to do that. Especially if you say at your time, when it's convenient for you, blah, blah, blah. If you can get money, even better. But yeah, great question. Yeah, they may be able to hook you up, says Ipsita, saying with customer support. Yeah. Oh yeah, trust me. I end up doing a usability testing for McAfee, you know, the really annoying autovirus that you can't get rid of. Just because by coincidence, I met somebody and say how much I hate it. And then I wish I could take it out of my computer, and I can't. And so they actually asked me to test it for them and explain to them why I hate it so much. And you know, they end up paying me. I honestly would have done it for free. I hate it so much. But then they end up giving me a gift card. So you will find, especially if they're not happy with the product, they would be more than happy to tell you why they're not happy. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, Vinicius. Yes, I will put the survey in the chat. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Here we go. I'm copying it right now. So, sorry. Should be this one. And let me know if it doesn't work. So yeah, if you want to, for the survey, should be this one. And let me know if it doesn't work. So yeah, no, you will find somebody. I promise you. There are a lot of disgruntled people that are very loud, just like me. So you guys have any other question? Anything else? Yes, Clint.
Just, I guess, a question. When you've gone through these steps, the scenarios of the usability testing, you've got your 5 participants, you've got your questions prepared, you've got your interviews, you're done. What's the analysis? Because you've got this qualitative information. How do I turn that into quantitative results? I guess what's the next step of what you have?
Okay, so, well, first of all, if you have some metrics, like I show you, like the UX slide or things like that, that's pretty easy, right? Because then you can calculate it, right? Those are just numbers. As far as the qualitative results, what I usually do first during the test, either myself or the observer, we write everything down, everything, right? And then I go through the task first to see, like, okay, were they able to complete the scenarios? Yes, no, maybe so. So I start with that, and you can start having, like, 8 out of 10 were able to do the scenario. That's the number. And then I'm gonna say, okay, how many mistakes were there? And so you can do another number from there. And then you can try to basically making numbers any of the trend that you notice. Like 5 out of 10 people could not understand what that icon meant. So that it makes it, you can also have a nice report, which is the summary, has these beautiful graphs and pie charts and all this stuff that, upper management really like. And then actually write down all your comments in the secondary pages. And if you can get real quotes, even better. Right. And be like, man, this is so frustrating, or wow, this is really awesome. So that you start out with the number part, something that look very semi-scientific, and then you can go back into the actual qualitative. So
what I'm hearing from your answer is, it sounds like the metrics that we create really need to align with the tasks that we want them to orient. We want to have some cohesion there with what the tasks they're doing, and then the metrics, so that we have a way of
I personally do that. But obviously every test is different. So, but the more data you get, the more you can make it as a number. So again, it's like, that's why I like to use those really basic, you know, how happy are you with the app, or how easy it was to complete the task? Because even though they're not, like I said, statistically significant, because 10 is not enough,
Right.
it's still enough to make an average. Okay,
Right.
there is an average of 5 to 6 or something like that. So, Ipsita, you have your hands up? Sorry.
Hi, I just wanted to respond to the entire, how do you take qual data and
Thank you.
quantify it?
Yes,
You
thank you.
can talk about the specifics of any given test, but one of the things you have to do as a UX researcher, especially somebody leaning in the qual end of it, is actually make a case for qual all along.
Mhm.
That the quant stuff, you know, the stuff that data scientists are putting together, the scripts they're running, the analytics, etc., that's what people are doing on a website. And what you're testing for is how they're dealing with the website, the app, the task, whatever. So you want to, I realize there's a huge emphasis on hard numbers,
Mhm.
especially given like the nature of this particular workshop, which is how do you do UX research
Right.
inexpensively?
Right.
Tiziana used the
Yeah.
phrase statistically insignificant,
Right.
which is something that I've run into people sort of sneering, well, you had a very small subject pool.
Right.
In that particular case, they were sneering at 32 intense qualitative interviews for
What?
a tiny niche population, which
Oh
is
my God.
extraordinarily rich, hard to get data.
Oh my
So
gosh.
as you're making a case, and I mean, this was not an industry, this was ethnographic work. One of the things that you want to be able to do, just have your talking points at the ready, is cultivating an acceptance of qualitative work
Right.
and what it's showing you, what it can do for you.
Right.
And I mean, not to be the IXDF cheerleader, one of the nice things about the research, the user research course, is that it walks through these things. So as you're trying to internalize these conventions, it's really good for reinforcing everything Tiziana has laid out, and you know, when you're talking about analysis.
Right.
And that's where, you know, you're looking for not only quotes, but you're looking for patterns.
Right.
You can say, you know, we only had 5 people, but hilariously enough, 4 of the 5 really zeroed in on this issue.
Right.
And, you know, you're justifying further budget, you're justifying repeat testing, etc.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's,
Yes.
yeah, you want to, and again, it's really hard, especially with people, you know, waving around the AI banner as if we're all going
Right.
to be replaced by
Right.
chatbots. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I hope that's helpful. But you really want to, you don't need to hit people over the head with it, but just cultivating that mindset over time and
But-
doing quick tests with small groups of
Mhm.
people, and then talking about how it makes a difference, how it saved you from sending something to engineering
Right.
that needed to not be done in that particular way.
Right.
That's, you want to sort of gently advocate
Mhm.
and persistently do that.
Right.
So
Right.
on that note, I will stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and there is a couple of other things sometimes I say that when people tell me that, oh, quantitative is so much better, right? It's like, okay, think about something as basic as analytics, right? That you can see how many people came to your website. And you can see that, let's say, a bunch of people spent a lot of time on your website, right? So most people will say, oh, that's great. They spending a lot of time on my website. But what if they spending a lot of time on your website because they can't find what they're looking for, and they have no choice? They have to be on that website and they can't find it. Is that really a good thing? Right? So that's kind of sometimes what I say when people talks about, oh yeah, you know, we need to have a lot of numbers. Like, yeah, you can tell that like 10 people spend half an hour on your website, but can you tell me why? What were they doing on the website, right? Or you know that people abandon the website. Why? That's kind of the big difference. It's like, yeah, you can tell me what people are doing, but you cannot tell me why. And numbers will not tell you why people do what they do. Qualitative data will tell you that. And like we were saying at the beginning, if you can prove that testing 2 people already helped, that's already a way to convince to get more testing. And if you're familiar with the developer in your company, you can even ask them like, hey, how long did it take you? How many hours did it take you to develop this or to code this? So that you don't have to use the number I gave you that may be off compared to your company, but you can physically ask your developer, how long did it take you to do this? So you can have real like, hey, to create this feature, it took whatever many hours of testing. Imagine if we did wrong and we have to do it again, that would be twice as long. So maybe those are ways of kind of start advocating for, you know, actually understanding people and what, you know, want to do that. So, so the quantity of data for 5. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that test, and I'm not saying that you only have to have qualitative data. I think the ideal situation, you have both. You have a lot of data to understand what people, how people behave on your website, and then you do qualitative data to understand why. So that's, but we all live in reality. So, you know, it would be great if you could do it, but it's not, you know, always possible. So, all right. So we're made it to 7. I can hang out for a little bit longer if you have more questions, but I want to let you know, I want to be respectful of your time. So I know we said that we're ending at 7, and already 5 minutes past. So, you ask people, right? You're having issues. So, but I'd be happy to hang out. And again, I will have the recording hopefully soon, and I will post it so everybody can watch it again. Make sure I will send out all the links for the workbook and for the survey together with the link for the video. So hopefully that was helpful. And I hope to see any new events. And in the survey, I'm also going to ask you ideas. What would you like to see as a new events? Anything you would be interested in. So, oh, good night, Ipsita. So,
awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, very welcome. Thank you for, especially East Coast guys. I know it's late for you. So thank you. East Coast and Central Coast. All right. Have a great
Good night,
night.
everybody. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Sana.
Bye.